And Landon, I got to start out with a question. If this company's demographic is 13 to 24, that means, think about the age of that demographic. That's not disposable income, that's allowance that they're spending. That can't be a good business model, Landon.
I completely agree. And I'm actually really glad that this technology was not around when I was that age. I think I just would have got myself in trouble. But yeah, you're right. There's no money for 13 to 24-year-olds, nothing like their competitors have. And so I agree. It's a tough spot for Snapchat. It's a tough demographic. And I think it's really interesting. I think I'd like to know and see the data on, do people, once they hit that mark, do they start leaving the platform? Because, it's relatively new. And so they attracted these younger people initially. Does their age continue to grow with the company? Do they stick around and that age will widen? I suspect not. I suspect that people in that mid-20s area start moving on to other things and, stop spending 13 hours a day on it. So it's really interesting. There were around 265 daily active users, 265 million daily active users. They gained 16 million last quarter, but most of that growth was outside the U.S. So as you guys know, with LikeFolio data, we're focused on English speaking only. So we're going to hit that U.S. market. We're going to show what that looks like really well. And I can tell you it's not great. I mean, if you look at just total Snapchat usage mentions over the last couple of years, they've done well over COVID, but it was on a downtrend before that. And they've had a couple of spikes from, releasing a new thing, or quarantine bumped them up quite a bit, but the downtrend basically just is continuing now at this point. So, and that's U.S. mentions. Again, they're getting a lot of growth internationally, but I don't think they're getting it in the U.S. And of course, you talk about money to spend. The U.S. generally does have more money to spend than outside the U.S., even though the demographic is not great for that. So a little concerning on the usage. And while Tom's got a great point about growth, they have the potential for growth because they're not that big compared to competitors. You do want to start to see those numbers coming in because there is so much competition. What's interesting is Snapchat was sort of ripped off. Their entire technology was ripped off by many competitors, and now they're kind of doing it back to TikTok, right? They're copying what TikTok's done because they've been so successful. And that's kind of what all these companies are doing. They just sort of either copy or buy out each other. And so it's tough for Snapchat. I don't envy their business model. They've got advertising that sort of gets in your way as opposed to enhances the experience. If you look at a company like Pinterest, for example, those ads actually enhance users' experience. People enjoy them because Pinterest knows what you're interested in. They know you're there for ideas and possibly buying something. So they show you something that's really cool that fits your likes and your budget, whereas Snapchat is more of a, hey, hold on just a minute. You can get back to what you were doing as long as you watch this for just a second. That sort of interruption advertising, which no one likes, is probably contributing to the fact that Snapchat's got a very low happiness compared to other platforms. Pinterest 73%, Facebook 60%, and Snapchat at 55%. So a little concerning long-term for this company.
Yeah, and Landon, if you look at some of your data on this, as they release multiple products like Lens Studio, Snap Minis, all these other things, do you see any boost in your social sentiment on this stuff? And how long does it last? Is it pretty quick where, hey, they've got a new little, thing to add onto their platform. It gave us a bump in there, but then it kind of dissipates relatively quickly?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things we like to look at was when they released Spotlight. And that is I guess it's sort of the clone or the copy or attempted copy of TikTok. And, that had a very good initial reaction. And of course, it's going to pull back. You're always going to see that kind of thing with a new platform, but we always want to see where did it level off to? Is there growth afterwards? And what we're seeing is it's fairly flat. I mean, it after the initial drop off, it raised a little bit, but now it's kind of coming back down to earth and a little bit flat. So a little bit concerning. I know that anecdotally, I've heard from people. I've got nieces and nephews that use these, and they say that TikTok's is just way better. I have gotten on TikTok. It is crazy to see their algorithm at work because they can tell what you're interested in, and it completely changes everything. If you use it for an hour, you and I sit down for an hour, I use it for an hour, you use it for an hour, our experiences after that hour are completely different. because they customize it towards you. And so I think their algorithm is fantastic. I don't know if Snapchat is able to replicate that. From the data that I've seen, they haven't done a fantastic job. It's a little bit difficult, I'm sure. That's how that launch went on Spotlight. And they've got a lot of other things, of course, that they've done. They've done stories, which is, nowhere near as well as, say, Instagram's, but they're trying to get it out there. They're trying to keep up. It's not for lack of effort. And they are getting good adoption. It's just, again, that demographic is tough to make money from, as Kevin points out.
Landon, one more question before I let you go. If all these companies that are coming out, and you saw it really starting with Facebook, right? When Instagram basically just copied Snapchat and took what appeared to be some of their intellectual property and just put it on their own tablet. If all these companies are copying each other, what happens? What's the future of this sector? Don't they just all morph into one? I mean, how do they compete with each other if they're all basically becoming each other?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's the quality of the product. Just like I talked about with TikTok, you can try to replicate the UI, but there is a very powerful back-end algorithm at work there, and I think that is very difficult to copy and very, very difficult to implement. And even, it's even the UI. A lot of times these companies, they create something like Instagram did to try to copy Snapchat or TikTok, and it just falls flat because the UI, even if it's just like 10 or 15% worse, users are, they're so used to everything being exactly right and super efficient that if you don't do it perfectly, it's going to be a miss. And so I don't think it's very easy to just say, all right, we're going to copy that company. Honestly, I think it's mergers and acquisitions that are going to do it because even though it seems like you should be able to copy things very easily, I think so many of the times it's fallen flat because the users have such a high expectation. They're used to that product that they were using before that the clone just doesn't feel up to par. And so I think mergers and acquisitions are the play. But perhaps over time, a company like Facebook can take over and just, boot Snapchat out of the way because of the number of users that they've got. First mover advantage is there. But when you've also got 10 times the users, that is a big opportunity. So we'll see how it plays out. I can tell you on this earnings report, LikeFolio data is leaning fairly bearish. We will be playing it to the downside. But again, the caveat being, we're looking at U.S. and English speaking only. So if there is a phenomenal international growth, that's sort of our blind spot that could beat us.